Welcome everybody to another edition of the In the Paint Show, presented by Ballislife, episode 138. I'm here with my guy Ani Umana. We're back, live. We're back on it in effect. We're just enjoying ourselves this week. It's kind of a dead week, and it should be a dead week for everybody out there a bit. Meaning, you should be trying to get some rest if you're a ball player, whether you're a collegiate player, incoming collegiate player, getting ready for this to report and to fall ball. And if you're a high school player, you should have some kind of break from your travel ball team. The live period is now over, so we're in a dead week. And this is a dead week, Ani. It's a dead weekend, but it's still a lot of things to talk about. How are you doing?
Man, I'm doing good. It's like you said, it's a dead week. So last week was probably more younger boys, right? Like you got to see some young guys in Ballislife, Junior All-American camp, and then there was a primetime nationals. They had the younger division was really good, so I got to see some young 7th and 8th graders and stuff like that. But I'm enjoying some time off. I ain't gonna lie to you, like just the whole traveling a lot and this, that, and the third. Even though I got to pick back up, but all good. But I agree with you. These guys need to take a rest. I know we say no days off, but take a couple days off. School season's gonna come up and everything's gonna get crazy again.
Oh yeah, the no days off. I know that's one of people's favorite Ballislife t-shirts. So yeah, make sure to check out the Ballislife store, shop.ballislife.com. We still got that in the paint discount code. 20% if you ain't used it, you use it. You know what I mean? We got
in the paint.
Yeah, sales. We got. Yeah, I was trying to pronounce it out. That worked out all bad. In the paint, basically, just like it sounds.
Right.
INTHEPAINT. There's back to school sales. There's some lines dropping with the influencers that you might like. Those dropped on the 29th of July. This is obviously in August now. So again, we're in the dead period. And like you said, we had the Ballislife Junior All-American camp. Now, to be transparent, that's something that Ballislife used as a title name for the camp. It's run by Open Gym Premier. The Ballislife staff, or myself or Matt Rodriguez, the guys, we don't produce it and run it. It's just we produce the jerseys that are getting better. It seems like every year the jerseys were nice, and there was a lot of kids, over 500 kids, 510 kids, probably at least 22 states, maybe a little bit more. So, I mean, it's a big event, Ani.
How many courts?
There's at least 9 courts. I mean, and it's been bigger before. I mean, before COVID, it's been bigger before. Maybe 600 kids. I mean, kids love it. It's like kind of their first introduction to especially if you're young, to be part of a camp. And, I like Ballislife. I like all the, the younger kids like they like to hold the gear, and then they like to be a part of something. They just want to be around other good kids. Right. But obviously, I focused on the 7th and 8th graders because, I mean, those are the better players. And there was some good players. And it'd be very interesting to see where these guys all end up in high school. So how about you, Ani? What event were you down in and where you saw the youth?
So I went to Primetime. They had their national tournament. Primetime Sports, they usually run weekly events in Dallas and do some in Houston and some in the West Texas and Central Texas area. But the Nationals is generally the big one. They hold at the end of the month. And it's really good for the young talent. Like the high school level, you're not going to see the elite level guys, right? You may find you a sleeper or two. But it's like the 7th and 8th grade, like that is really talented. And I'm not watching 5th and 6th graders really, but
correct.
The 7th and 8th grade is very interesting. So I see a couple guys. Like I saw Anthony Black's brother Beckham, really, really good. He has a chance to be really good. Way more skilled than his brother was at the same time. Not much of a dog that AB was, because AB played more football. at that
Sure.
time. But like, got to see guys like him, saw the one of the Houston Hoops 7th grade groups really good, pro skills, and just to get to see these young guys early, and just seeing the athleticism, seeing good guard play and stuff. Like, it was good just to kind of go back down and watch some of the young cats. But Primetime runs their national events, probably like 700-800 teams.
Wow.
Yeah, it's big. It used to be bigger. It used to be like 1,100-1,200 teams. And but yeah, like, it's really good for the young teams. Like, that's what the value is.
So who are some of the other 226 and 227s that you saw?
See, I don't even have names because I was just like,
just rotating through.
They have numbers. Dylan Battie, who's the son of Tony Battie.
Tony Battie's son.
Yeah, he has a younger brother. He's probably like 6'3", 6'4". He's like a wing at 2027. Really, really talented. Like, he has a chance of being really good. His son Dylan Battie, who's a 2024 that goes to Lancaster. He has a chance to be a Division I basketball player. So you definitely see where the just the bloodlines. You see how like, the kids are athletic. Can handle some, shooting some. So it's very interesting just to see all that. And Houston Hoops had a kid. He's gonna go. He doesn't know what high school he'll probably end up going, but really shot the piss out of it. Drive Nation had a 7th grade group, was really talented. They had like 3 kids that were about 6'4" and up.
Wow.
But yeah, it was like, and then like watching 3D Empire, watching Anthony Black's brother, that was my first time really get to sit down and look at him. I knew he was pretty good, because normally you don't see videographers for 7th grade games. But I saw about 2 of them. I was like,
so you knew something was up.
Yeah, I was like, okay, like, is he just filming because it's Anthony Black brother, or and then he got a rebound, like pushed it with his offhand. He's a righty, but he pushed it with his left and did a floater with the left hand. I'm like, okay, shit. Like, I don't even see varsity players doing that right now. So
he has a chance.
Yeah, he has a chance. So
227. So I saw some 227 and 226. Obviously, there's a lot of kids there at the Ballislife Jr. All-American camp. It's in Anaheim. And, they did have rosters for the top All-Star games. That's what I focus on. There was a couple other scouts there. And obviously, the MVP was Brandon McCoy Jr., 6'2" guard. And Brandon McCoy is already big and bouncy. I think that's, people. He's from Oakland. And he's very good. He's he carries himself like he's a varsity player already. He's already played in showcase events where he's shown that he's going to be a good player. And he plays for the hometown favorites. Why not? He's played on that team, Darrell Wright's team. And he's bouncy above the rim already. Again, like I said, amongst this group, he carries himself like he's a player to be reckoned with. There was a lot of good players in this camp. A few other guys, number 470, Caden Bailey. He's from Irvine. He's 6'1". Did a lot of good things. Again, I'm just going down the list.
Yeah.
These are the guys that are considered some of the best. Number 531 and number 531, if I could find him on this list, is Elias Obina. Elias Obina was a good player. He was about 6. He's about 6'2", maybe. He was very good. Number 531. Stocky with a nice skill level. Guy can score. Number 564. Isaiah Slim Rogers. He's plays for the Compton Magic 15. Isaiah Rogers from Corona area. He's going to go to Corona Centennial. He's about 6'1". So he did really well. Number 475. Throwing some nice passes. That's Justice Griffith. He's a strong kid. Justice is built like a football player. He's also from Corona. He's about 5'11", 6 foot. He's going to Corona Centennial. Gets in a stance, plays defense. Number 365, Jason Crow Jr. He's obviously the son of Jason Crow, who coaches at Linwood High School, and he's going to go to Linwood High School. He got moved up to the Compton Magic 16s. He's a lefty guard who can get in the key, make plays. He did really well. I mean, most of these guys are really well known on the West Coast already.
Okay.
They're well known. The last guy who I thought was in the first tier was Ryder Portela, number 566, a little bigger, about 6'3". Ryder's from Phoenix, and his coach is Ray Portela, who was our National Coach of the Year at Sunny Slope in 2021. So he's obviously going to play for his dad.
Yeah.
Just like Crow, and he's in Phoenix. He's a rising ninth grader. There were some good seventh graders as well. Let me see if I could pull some of these seventh graders who I thought were pretty good in the seventh grade. I just watched the all-star game for the eighth grade and the seventh grade. I thought
it'll be easier than watching 500 kids.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Dude, when you go there, if you've never been there before, it's kind of overwhelming. If you don't know where to go, it's just like Ian Nikolov, 6'2", hit some deep shots. He was really good, 227. Parks Weaver, 5'10" guy, very good. Kendall Charleston, 5'10", 227, made a name for himself. Jaden Berry, I thought he could play a bit. He's a nice stop and pop game, little shake and bake. Jaden Berry's about 5'9". He did really well. So again, it's more about the experience. The kids get out there, have a good time, and they really enjoy themselves. So I really enjoy going to that. And the MVPs, again, shows you how, you just never know where a kid, just because you're good in this camp or you're good,
right,
at this event or at this age, it doesn't mean you're going to be there at the end. The previous camp MVPs are Elijah Scranton. I don't even know if you know who that is. You probably don't even know who that is. He was a good young player, and he did 3 years of high school. Then he was a little older, and then he might be toiling in the junior college or a small college. I'd have to go look it up. Oh, wow. Elijah was a good player at a young age. 216, Kyrie Walker, who people know. Kyrie was a big time junior high, middle school player. And then in 217 was Obina Awana.
Oh, yeah. I remember him.
He's at Cal, I believe now.
Okay.
He's about 6'7". He was a big, strong kid then.
Yeah, very developed at a young age.
So in 218, the camp MVP was Devon Arlington, who just accepted a scholarship. He just was a senior. And I think Devon Arlington is going to Ivy League. Yeah, let me see where Devon Arlington is going, because I just forget. He's going to Yale.
Okay.
So great for him. He got better. He was a really good, decorated high school player. 219, Jared McCain, who we all know, was going to Duke. One more year left at a Corona Centennial. There wasn't a camp in 220. And 221, Solomon Bailey, who's at Crossroads. Again, so everybody's at different stages of development. I think Brandon is one of the better players of that group, but we'll see how he develops.
It's very interesting just seeing the variation of type of guys. You got, like they said, at a young age, you got like Jared McCain, who's going to do Kyrie, who I know is kind of flirting with like the pro rapper, like back in the day, like you said, like was a complete man child, right? Yeah. Like you mentioned the first kid, I never heard of him. So like you said, like when we do rankings on events, it's like it's just for that particular event. Like it doesn't mean you make it.
Correct.
I think it's always sometimes people like, oh, he got ranked top 5. It means he's going high major now. No, it doesn't. It doesn't mean that. It means he was just good at that day, or really good, or the best that day.
Yeah, and I'm always pulling for a guy like Elijah Scranton. I hope I see him at an event or something and say what's up and see how he's doing.
Right.
Again, I knew he wasn't going to be a big time college, Pac-12 or Big 12 level guy. But he was good. He was good in high school. So again, everybody keeps developing at a different pace. Just keep working on your game. Again, like we said, get some rest. And speaking of rest, Ani, you're going to rest a little bit this weekend. Or this, as this week finishes and then into this weekend. But what do you got going on? Let's talk about the following. We would just be kind of a busy week, and we're going to get back on it. And then we're going to have the Pangos All-American Festival at the end of August, which should be high-level players. But before that, the Let's talk about middle of August.
Yeah, middle of August, and also I'll be at Vegas for the circuit event, and I'll be going to August 10th through 12th, and then I'm gonna fly on the 12th to Chicago for the Elite 24. So they had their roster put up. Elite 24 did. So I mean, it's a high level roster. I wish there was people when they first announced it, they didn't know what that was like. Oh, this is gonna be Under Armour people, this, that, and the third, or how good was UA? Like, they kind of, even though it is Under Armour, they associated like that was just gonna be Under Armour players. And there are some good Under Armour guys. There's some really good ones. But I don't think some kids and players realize how good it was. So, starting out, you got Tahad Pettiford, who's had a really good summer. He's one team. This is Team Future, FUTR. Stephon Castle was really good for Atlanta Express this year. Simeon Wilcher, who had a really strong Peace Jam, I think, with the New Jersey Scholars, correct?
Yeah.
You got Bryson Tucker, a 224 kid who's really talented. Xavier Booker, which we all know, we talked about Xavier multiple times here as a riser in that class. Rayvon Griffith. I think he committed somewhere. I forgot. After my 223 kid, Derek Queen, 224 kid that's at Montverde that played for Team Thrill, who Derek Queen's a kid that's lost a lot of weight. He helped lead his team to almost to the championship game in Atlanta, and then they won it all in Chicago. And he's been the head of that. Victorious Miller, 224, really talented kid, like a top 10 to 15 player in the country. Justin Edwards, I think he just committed to Kentucky. Top 3 to 5 player in the country. Bay Fall, who was fantastic at Pangos and fantastic at NBA Top 100 camp. A kid that almost got the MVP of NBA Top 100 camp if his team would have won the championship. Sean Stewart, 223, who's going to Duke. And then Marco Jackson, 223 kid. He plays for We Are One, and I got to see him in Atlanta, and he was really good. I think he's going to be a big-time stock riser. So, like, that's one team. That's
a pretty good team.
Multiple high majors, guys have a chance to be pros. I mean, it's a talented group. Then Team Havoc, Ian Jackson, who came onto the show from New York. Really talented kid, one of the best players in the country in his class. Bryson Tiller, another really talented player. Kwame Evans, someone that's always been at the top of the rankings, higher up top rankings since he was young, like a skilled big wing forward type. Boogie Flan, who's had a really good summer. Isaiah Collier, one of the best point guards in the country, probably the best passing point guard in the country.
Wow.
From Georgia, Dennis Evans, our girl.
Our guy Dennis is in there, huh?
Dennis in there. Chelsea's boy. Dennis is in there. It's had a fantastic summer. One of the biggest risers in the country, 223, and he's young, just turned 17 last month or a month and a half ago. Madas Buzelis, who's going to G League Ignite. He's a really talented 6'10" skill guy. Trenton Flowers, 224, I believe, right?
Yeah.
One of the better players in this class. Jamie Kaiser Jr., another really talented guy. Trey Johnson, arguably the best player in his class. I know I'm biased on that because I'm a Texas guy, a Dallas guy. But, he's arguably the best scorer, one of the best players in this class. JP Estrella, who got to see a good bit in the past, from NBA Top 100 camp.
Yeah.
And for a 30-day span, got to see a lot of him. I didn't know he was 6'2" as a freshman and just grew. Now he's 6'10", 6'11".
Wow.
Lefty, skilled, can shoot it. He's going to be someone that's just a high-level basketball player, 223. And Elliot Cadeau, 224 kid from New York. And, we're going to talk about some New York guards later on.
Yeah.
But Elliot, super talented guard. Been playing 17 since he was a freshman. So, that's the crop of talent from Team Future and Team Havoc we got for Elite 24. So, there's some guys that should have got in there, that I think may have been kicking themselves a little bit that they didn't get in there.
Gotcha. Yeah. I mean, that's a good group. And like I said, there's some cross mixture with Nike and there's some cross mixture with Adidas, like you said, our guy Bay Fall, a few others. So when you went to Atlanta, it's easy for people to say, oh, well, how good is Under Armour, like you said.
Right.
But, when again, it's just one game, but when Ryan Silver's group won that game on national TV, everybody's like, oh, let's see, Under Armour's got some players. So, I mean, was Under Armour pretty comparable to Adidas? How good was Under Armour this year?
I thought Under Armour was comparable to Adidas. I think Under Armour was slightly better than Adidas this year.
Wow.
And this is not, I'm not like a Under Armour guy or whatever. It's just, just kind of how I felt, just being able to see all three. But Under Armour was solid. It was solid. It was good. There's good talent. There's some good hidden guys out there. Just got to see like Canada Elite. They had a 225. That's really good guard. Got a chance. Team Thrills loaded. Houston Defenders. We Are One. Like you saw a lot of Middlesex Magic. Like there were some really talented players in Under Armour. It definitely wasn't a waste of time. So I think you got to be able to see all of them. Obviously, Nike's at the top, but Adidas last year was really good. Was very good. And this year, it's not as good, but that's okay. I think most, it's just going to be like that. But Under Armour definitely wasn't a waste of time to coaches. I don't think it was a waste of time for evaluators and scouts. No. I think we just always look at Nike, which is, that's the best. But you see you'll really find some guys in these Adidas, Under Armour, and even in the independent route. Like you look at two players that play independent, Xavier Booker and Dennis Evans. So, but going back to Under Armour, I think it's good. I thought it was slightly better than Adidas this year. So,
wow. That's good. I mean, that's good, healthy. That's healthy competition. That's healthy for the game. If they keep pushing it forward, obviously our girl Chelsea is at the Steph Curry camp, speaking of Under Armour. So, she'll be back on next time when we're back on. So she's working, doing her thing, watching players and helping out with the kids. I don't know to the extent what the format is, but we'll find out when she comes back. But yeah, that should be good. Elite 24 is obviously a one game. It'll be on that Friday, August 12th. It'll be on ESPN, Family and Networks. It's always been on that. It's been a showcase game. They have the girls' game now. So that's a lot of work. And I know it's a lot of work because I was involved.
Right. Tell us about that.
I was involved in, getting the top guys there was a lot of work, and I always respect the guys who came, wanted to play. I just remember I had put Julius Randle and Aaron Gordon on the same team. And Aaron's like, I'm not sure if I'm going to play. I'm like, okay, I'll leave you on the one team then. At the time, it was Team Raymond Lewis versus Team Marcus Johnson because it was in LA. So I decided to name him that. Marcus was like, well, I got the team named after me, but I didn't get invited to a VIP seat. What's up with that? The first year. So I was like, Marcus, you come next year in 2011. It was all good. He enjoyed himself, And people didn't know back then. Marcus didn't really have obviously social media was barely getting on. People didn't know his son Josiah, and I think now people know Josiah and they know more about Marcus. And for whatever reason, now the Bucks are getting more. Those Bucks players and Bucks teams are getting more accolades. I guess maybe because of the Greek Freak and because the Bucks have been winning.
Right.
But I wanted to basically highlight all the great LA players, the street ball players, and that's what I did. I built a program. I was so happy about it. I got as many names as I could, and people didn't even know. Some people, besides the Drew League, didn't even know LA had a street ball scene. Really, Venice Beach is kind of the epicenter of it.
Mm-hmm.
And Venice Beach, the event went from Rucker Park to Venice Beach, so it was at Rucker, 06, 07, 08, and 09. And the first one was do the players want to play in it? They heard it was outdoors, and it was like, oh man. But once Kevin Love committed, the other guys, jumped on board. The other guys kind of jumped on board. Michael Beasley played. Brandon Jennings did as a rising junior, and that's the first time people in New York got to see how good Brandon was. And we were like, we know he's good. And then he went to Oak Hill. So then the 07 game was good. Kemba Walker, a lot of good players played. The top. It was almost like a preseason McDonald's All-American game. That was kind of the premise of it. And it was basically no, it was Boost Mobile Elite 24. Not a lot of shoe company influence, or that seemed how it started, right? Just 24 good players. Let's see what they got. And then the third year included like Jeremy Tyler, Jordan Hamilton. And then the fourth year, when we were out there in New York, it was raining. It was you could see it. I was like, okay, guys, I've done a lot of events. I can see those clouds. Like, it's gonna start raining here in about 45 minutes. Like, and everybody's like, oh, let's get the game in. But that's a New York type thing. Like, let's get the game in. Rain
before the rain hits.
And I'm a California boy, and I'm looking at the sky, and I'm like, we're not gonna get this game in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it starts sprinkling. Then next, everybody's got these like blowers trying to like blow off the water. I was like, this is not gonna work. This ain't gonna work. So in the brilliance, our guy Ron Clario, who our guest on the show, Ron Clario goes from the top of his lungs, guys, let's go to the Gauchos gym. We got the Gauchos gym. He saw, this is how you get there. I mean, Ron is screaming at the top of his lungs to anybody who'll listen. He's like, go over the bridge, go left, make a right, you make 2 turns, and it's right there. And everybody's just like, yeah. Nobody knew what he was talking about. Unless you're unless you're kind of like a basketball guy, you kind of already knew where the Gauchos gym was compared to being at Rucker Park, which is up on 155th and wherever it is, Amsterdam. So, man, that was memorable. We jumped on a train. I remember Atope from the Content Magic was on that train with us, a few other guys, and we were just like, this is crazy. It was kind of wet, but we did an event indoors. Harrison Barnes was there. Will Barton. Josh Smith. Do you remember Josh Smith, who went to UCLA? He was kind of like a big name. Mm-hmm. Austin Rivers was there as a rising junior. So after that, I think it made sense when we got involved more, and student sports got bought by ESPN. We moved it out to Venice Beach. It would seem like a natural move. And that's when I wanted to highlight Raymond Lewis, Marcus Johnson, and all the LA guys. And I was able to invite some of those guys who were in the program and who were well-known street ball players, to the event. So they were happy about that. Raymond Lewis had already been passed away, that was 2010. He'd passed away in 2001. So he'd already been dead for almost 10 years. But at that time, I was working with my buddies, Dean Prater, and he was trying to get the Raymond Lewis documentary out there. And I just did that to obviously he deserved it. He's like the greatest street ball player in California history. There's no debate about it. And team named one of the team Raymond Lewis. Bobito Garcia shouted out Raymond on the telecast. Like, it all worked out good. So that was a lot of work. Getting the players out there. The hotel was nice. And I just remember back to that Aaron Gordon, Julius Randle. Randle came out twice, and then Aaron's like, "Let's play." And I just remembered, I knew one team was better than the other in 2012. I was like, let's leave Julius and Aaron on the same team. And I just remember some of the guys from the other team. They'll remain nameless. They were just like, "Man, this ain't fair." I was like, "I thought you guys are like future pros. Like,
right?
What are you scared of? Like, oh no, why is Aaron and Julius on the same team? Like." So, of course, during the game, Aaron and Julius balled out. You know what I mean? Like, nobody could stop them. And just the funny things you remember about the games like that. And I'm sure you'll remember something funny when you go to Chicago next week.
But, 100%.
Yeah, it was a great time. I do remember Michael Irvin came out. I don't know if he knew Doc. He might have known Doc. Not really sure. So, Austin was there for the second year. And I do remember this was outdoors, and I remember this is on concrete. The event didn't go to the wooden floor until it moved back to New York, because that was the next step.
Right.
We wanted to keep the game. We're like, let's keep the game in LA, and they wanted to move it back to New York. And went to Dumbo, went to the waterfront. It was a great venue. And I remember thinking, okay, let's get through this game. It'll be good. And I remember Austin Rivers fell right on his wrist, bro, right hard. And I was like, okay, if Austin Rivers breaks his wrist,
Oh yeah.
this event is like I don't know if we're gonna have this event in the future like this anymore. He toughed it out though. He got up. He was all right. He was okay, but he fell hard, and that was always the case. Like, it's just the progression of the game. We had the game outdoors, and that was awesome. But as time went by, and these players got bigger, and social media got bigger, and I just think the parents got more aware. Like I remember Dakari Johnson, who's from New Jersey, New York. Dakari played at Kentucky, and his mom would tell me, Ronnie, Takari's not playing that Elite 24 no matter what. Like, his knees can't take it. No, he's not doing it, like, so, and I respected it. She was just honest, you know what I mean? And I remember we also had a great moment. We had Bobito was great emceeing. He did his homework. He knew the players. We had our guy, the Grammy Award winner. His name is slipping my mind right now. He was emceeing for like a half of the game, and it was great. Boy, I just can't. Jamie Foxx. Jamie Foxx did it.
We had Jamie Foxx out there.
Yeah, we had Jamie Foxx out there. I think he had an Under Armour deal, and he knew some of the guys in the marketing.
Mm-hmm.
And like that was big, you know what I mean? Like Jamie Foxx, we just give him the mic, let him rock, like
let him do what he do.
Let him do what he do. And it was just fun. So yeah, and honestly, when the game went back to New York for 13, 14, 15, 16, they had a wooden floor. It was probably better for the players. And then Zion played. What's our guy from New York who played at Lincoln after Lance Stevenson? And Lance Stevenson played 3 times, but he played in the early years. Tyreek played in the early years. I just remember he went to Seton Hall, and like I liked his game. He was good. So yeah, great memories overall. I could talk about it for a long time, but it's a good event, and obviously it's a New York feel. It's obviously born in New York, and obviously we've had a lot of talk about New York guards and New York theme lately. So yeah, what are your did you watch any of the games on ESPN back then?
Yeah, I watched the one I really watched was I think RJ Hampton was in there. That was he was in there that year. I remember fairly well, like that, because I think it was outside.
Yeah.
Was it in New York?
13. Yeah, it had to be in New York with RJ Hampton, I believe.
Yeah, I think it was in New York, and that was like, whoa. I was like,
yeah. Was it underneath the bridge, or was it the one outdoor by the water?
It was outdoor by the water.
Okay. Ivan Rabb played in it. Yeah.
Yep. All them guys.
Yeah, that was 213. That was 213. Yeah.
Was it 213? RJ was.
He was 215, 16.
No, RJ Hampton was 28, 2019. It was
when he was 16. Young. Okay, so it might have been the 16 game with Zion.
Yeah, because he was younger, and I remember he was in there, and so that was my first year watching. I was like, whoa, like. I didn't know they were doing it like that. Like,
yeah, it was a big production, a good event, and again, it's coming back after 5 years, 2016.
Yeah,
and like I said, it morphed into the Steph Curry, and what is your speaking of like New York guards and New York style play? What is your introduction to that? Like,
man, it was like just being a basketball head, so like. Watching documentaries, right? Like a lot of and one early than just documentaries like your Lamar Odoms, your for Alston's, your Stephon Marbury's, Then they'll talk about like Julius Erving and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Like they will have interviews about guys that should have been in the NBA, but they didn't make it, like Pee Wee Kirkland. You know what I mean? Like then you just do a lot of digging. We talked about this a little bit earlier, like. New York basketball goes all the back from the, 50s, 60s, 70s, when Dr. J would come out. You had NBA All-Stars come out just, in the summers just to play. Rucker Park, that's, is when everything got going. Like your Sebastian Telfair is like, in New York guards, you just know when you see one, even to this day. Just like, just a gritty downhill guard, can pass, got some flair to him.
The handle, yeah.
The handle and everything. So I think my introduction just was like documentaries early. Like when I was a kid, like I was so interested in just like the style play and just and one. And then like start with and one, and then you like, okay, well, what was before this, right? And then you kind of go like, oh, Dr. J and Kareem and Wilt, we used to come to Rucker and play. Like, then they would talk about guys that would play, could have been in the league, but they were making, they're in the street life. You know what I mean? So like, there's just so great for Alston. Like, there's just so many guys, but like it started like and one. Then it just like, okay, then you go further and further back, and you're like, oh, like, this is a rich history.
Very rich. Yeah, I studied the history. I followed it a lot. And I when I was with ESPN and we did the Elite 24, I try to pub those high school guys as much as I could, the guys who didn't make it, with lists and stuff and stories. We did this series like called Rucker to Venice, where we stopped and interviewed guys at every park that's well known in the country. We started at Rucker and we ended at Venice.
Yeah.
And we went down to the I think so, what's the one in Texas? Tandy? Tandy. We talked to a couple guys that were over there. Obviously, the legend is Dwayne Legend Rogers, who everybody knows. And I don't know. Maybe in future years, Texas will have more guys that are known for like their street ball. But I mean, sometimes in respects, it's not great to be known for guys who didn't make it. You want guys to make it. Obviously, New York has a ton of guys, and Philly too, that didn't make it. And just goes to the talent level of those cities. So when it brings us to that Showtime documentary, the New York Point Gods, and which was just recently dropped, and it's gotten a lot of attention. There was a premiere on it, and it came out and people watched it. And it just focused on the 80s and 90s. So it's okay. And we knew it was coming out because our guy, Ron Niclario, came on the show and told us that he was in it and that he was the reason why the And One documentary 30 for 30 got pushed up was because of this KD was involved in this production for this New York Point Gods one. So it focused on the 80s and 90s, which it basically focused on Rod Strickland, Rafer Alston, Mark Jackson, Kenny Smith, I think Steph. And for me, that's like great. And it's great to relive that or talk about that. I know Bobito came on it. And I like to shout out Bobito because he really, when he did Elite 24, he really did his homework, studied all 24 guys, made sure he knew all of them by face and by name, face. And I always give him a lot of credit. Right? He's really student of the game. Like, he'll pick it up really fast. He's like, Ronnie, who are those guys? What's the numbers? Tell me, So, yeah, I'm always love to give a shout out to him. And our guy Niclario is always a straight shooter. And what I just didn't think of the documentary is like, when you talk about the history of New York basketball, obviously you can go back far, Pop Gates and all these guys who played at Brent Franklin in Harlem, goes back to like the late 30s that were well known. PSAL players are well known in the 30s and 40s. And like the height of it, from what I've gathered over the years of me reading, talking to people, is like the 60s and 70s, early 70s. Like you said, when Dr. J played, Pee Wee Kirkland, Joe Hammond, guys that were good enough to play with the pros. And some did, and some played in the pros, and some, like you said, were in the street life. Like, I always thought that was the Mecca and the golden era time. And then the two greatest books that I've ever read in basketball, really, and I've said that on previous pods, are Heaven is a Playground by Rick Tallender, who came out about 73, 74. And then the other one would be Foul, which is the Connie Hawkins story, where it talks about Connie getting involved in the gambling scandal. And he was kind of unjustly he didn't really break into the NBA until he was like 28 years old. And his knees were already shot. And he's still an NBA Hall of Famer.
Right.
So, yeah, he was like 50% of how good he was supposed to be. He was unbelievable. He's considered one of the best high school players ever. He'd have been a cinch All-American in Iowa. And he got involved in that. So when I hear about this documentary, I'm like, well, if you guys didn't really talk about the 70s and 60s, for me, it's I'm not knocking down I'm not breaking records. I'm not sitting here waiting to watch it on it yet.
Right.
I don't know about you. And
Yeah, no, that's kind of where I'm at. Like,
yeah,
I like the stuff like that. I like when you talk about history. I always like to see where it started.
yeah,
And I think it really started, like you talked about, with Dr. J, Connie Hawkins,
yeah,
Noel Hammond, Pee Wee Kirkland, and
yeah,
seeing guys like Wilt out there. Like, I wish there was more stuff talking about that.
yeah,
And then you go into the 80s with Ross Strickland, and you got
yeah,
Steph, you got all those guys, which is
yeah.
great.
Mark
Like,
Jackson,
but I don't, and Mark Jackson. I just
Pearl,
think, and I
yeah,
just think you have to. For me, I'm always big on how it started. So I like to go like when
yeah,
like I'm a history like
yeah,
I'll be bored just watching history, but I like to start from the beginning. So for me, I think the
yeah.
beginning is at those times where like that kind of helped build these guys in the 80s and 90s. I think you're just not really covering everything you
Correct.
need to when you don't start at the beginning.
Yeah, yeah. Because if Tiny Archibald is not really part of that doc, and I think some people mention that, it's like
right.
he's one of the greatest NBA players of all time. He led the league in scoring and assists, the only guy to do it. He adjusted his game, became part of a Boston Celtics team that won the championship. He's, went to DeWitt Clinton, which a lot of great players went to that high school. Guys that were so good. I mean, our guy Tiny Archibald didn't start to his senior year, not because he wasn't good. The team was too loaded. He was too loaded. They were undefeated his senior year, and they had some other good players who were all city type guys. And like he didn't really get in there into his senior year, and had to go to a junior college and went to UTEP, and then he broke into the league. But he was good, and that's the kind of stories you want to hear. Like
100%.
Because you hear the street guys, you had street agents back then who were basically, and that's what Rick Tallender book Heaven in the Playground is about a little bit. We can't forget Fly Williams. I don't know if you know Fly Williams' story much, but he played at Austin P in Clarksville, Tennessee. He was an All-American, but I mean, he was in the streets heavy. He was basically dealing drugs to like his teammates on the St. Louis Spirits and in other ABA teams. Like, oh, Fly, that's where you get that's where we get the dope from. Like, so we're like, oh, we're playing the Spirits, we're about to score, like we're about to connect.
Yeah, because they're gonna be on.
Yeah, because Fly's the guy, you know what I mean? And like it's crazy because Fly survived a gunshot wound like in 87. So he was probably at that time maybe 40, 45. He was kind of done playing. And dude, Fly still got busted later, like running a big heroin distribution network, like as late as like 216 or 217. So Fly's like spending like the last years of his life in jail. You know what I mean? Like it sucks. Just people didn't really think that. They're like, okay, Fly did that back in the day. Like he's not doing that now. Like he was still
like he older. Like he done with that. You know what I mean? Like he don't transition.
No, like Fly's in the street. So those are the kind of stories you hear. So Fly, and then like you said, it's kind of hard to cover or to see why is Pearl and Mark Jackson, Kenny Smith, and these Kenny Anderson so big in the 80s. Like something set that up. It didn't just happen. Like, so you want to know a little bit about that history. And I love to follow that history. So I just threw it on Twitter. I came out with the list of like my top New York City point guards of all time. And I forgot Dean the Dream Meminger. I'll say that, and Vern Fleming. Somebody mentioned that right away. My buddy Dane Irvin. He's like, oh, you didn't mention Dean the Dream and Vern Fleming. I'm like, yeah, those should have been in the top 30. So I came up with 30. I put it on Twitter. Go check my Twitter handle. You check it out. But
yeah, I need to check that out.
Yeah. I have Nate Archibald #1, Rod Strickland 2, and I think Rod doesn't get enough credit for how good a pro he was, how good he is. I have Kenny Anderson 3, Steph 4, Pearl 5, which might be a little high. I kind of knocked some of the older guys down. Kemba Walker 6, Lenny Wilkins 7. Lenny Wilkins is a good player. Skip to my Lou, I have him 8. I like Skip. Okay. I'd probably have him higher if I could. I'd have Skip higher. He's like one of my favorite players. Pee Wee Kirkland 9. Again, I don't know how much higher Pee Wee Kirkland can be, but again, his rivalry with Tiny Archibald is like, besides Joe Hammond and Dr. J, supposed to be like the best rivalry in playground history.
That's what I heard they used to get.
Like Pee Wee Kirkland's a bad dude. Like, why am I gonna go play for a team? What? I'm in the streets, dude. I'm making money. Same thing with Joe Hammond. Like, The Lakers offered Joe Hammond a contract, and they were like, I think, oh man, $200K, and they didn't have a no cut clause. And I think for him, and Joe Hammond would say this, and he was making $200K, a $200K contract, and I think the Lakers thought like they were doing him such a service, but for his mentality in the streets, he said at age 15, his dad was already hiding money for him all over apartment buildings, and in his apartment at 15, he already had 100 racks.
And especially at that time, so like 100, that's like, I don't know, but like
that's a lot of money.
That's a lot of bread.
Inflation, that's a lot of money, bro.
Yeah, you talk about $500,000 really in today's terms,
$500,000 or the $750,000 in today's money. So you can just imagine the mentality of those guys. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, Fly Williams would just come and double park in front of hydrants and just play in the second half. I guess, Joe Hammond was a little like that. He'd show up when he wanted to, you know what I mean? But those stories live on and on forever. I don't know what's your favorite story, Ani, but yeah, you can't go wrong with Tiny Archibald because he covers all grounds. JUCO, right. High school, D1, pro, all-star, all-pro. Like, every other guy has some kind of knock on their game. And, some guys have, oh, he wasn't a great high school player. He got good later. Or, oh, he was great in high school, but he didn't do in the pros. I don't know what your favorite story is or who your favorite guy is, but
I ain't gonna lie. Like Pee Wee was just my favorite one because when they would say when Kareem and Dr. J would talk about him, I was like, I did like hella research on him. I was just like, and then seeing a little bit, I'm like, yo, this dude was really cold. Like he was busting pros. So just like it's just the whole like he should have been the NBA but didn't, and then got into the street life. It just was so crazy, like how much money he was making in the streets, and it's just like, you know what? I'm not even worried about the pro stuff. Like, but he was super talented. They're like, he's one of the best players that should have been pro but didn't go pro. The street ball. So I thought that was interesting. Like you said, Tiny. It's just like you said, he hits all high school. Started his senior year, the JUCO. So he knows everything. Like he can relate to anybody.
He can relate to anybody. Yeah, correct. And like you said, you have a guy who played what Kansas City Royals at the time. I forgot the name of the team where he was the leading scorer and leading assist guy in the league. And it's like MVP type All Pro. And then he kind of adjusted his game when he played with Bird and that when the Celtics had that young core, and he was like a veteran leader on that 81 team. Yeah. And they won it. So, like, he adjusted his game. Like you said, he knew the game. You know what I mean? He wasn't going to be like, oh, I'm going to play on a weak team and just try to put up numbers. Smart.
Right.
And Tiny got it done. So, yeah, those are all great stories. Tiny's not my favorite player. I guess my favorite player is Skip and Kenny Anderson. Kenny Anderson is he jumps on Twitter and, like, responds. I like Kenny Anderson because he's always jumping on Twitter and he'll respond. He'll be like, Ronnie, well, yeah, how you doing? Like he just
right, yeah, he is active. He'll respond to just random people, like, oh yeah, just kind of
how you doing? Yeah. So that's awesome to see because he's really an icon in New York. You know what I mean? But he's just an everyday guy to me. He's just an everyday guy, like
right.
And he's had a documentary out. There's so many documentary outs now, Ani. It's just crazy. We talked about many of them on the pod. The Raymond Lewis documentary finally dropped. Like I said, that's a story in itself, and I'll hope to have Ryan Pomaliski and Dean Prater on the pod. We should get them on too to talk about how that became to be. That's a story in itself.
Yeah.
Because the key was finding footage. Because again, there's footage of Dr. J at the Rucker.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little footage of Pee Wee Kirkland.
Yeah.
And there's even a little footage of Earl the Goat. And obviously the Goat he's not on any New York City point guards because he's more like a wing, an undersized wing who could jump in sky. He became famous because obviously Goat Park. Was a park got named after him.
Right.
But he was famous because the HBO did a movie on him too. Rebound, the Earl the Goat Manigault story, and he passed away in 1998. Yeah. His heart gave out on him. A lot of these guys. That's what's crazy about That's what's crazy about our guy I told you who survived and did all that, and got put
Fly.
in jail recently.
Yeah.
Fly, like, because he just was like had 9 lives. You know what I mean? Because Earl would tell people, yeah, man, I have $1 million. I shot it up all in my arms. He was a heroin addict by
That's
24, 23.
right.
It's just and I've seen video of him and he's talking and they're interviewing the GOAT and he's in his early 20s and his eyes are just deep set and he has that black under him and you could tell he's already really in the street like that and already really affected. And there's video of him and he can still kind of get up. You could tell he could jump. It's like, wow. You can imagine how good he was at like 16 or 17, like.
Yeah, about they're talking about he was touching the top of the backboard and everything.
Yeah. Like he just, there's a couple guys like that. Jackie Jackson, they said was, and Helicopter Knowing. So New York is always going to be the mecca for that. So, I mean, I'm sure this documentary is worth watching. I'm going to watch it soon. I'm sure our listeners are going to watch it. But yeah, New York just has its own flair. And it's funny when you talk about Pearl, you have such high range of opinions on guys. You know what I mean? And I don't think you get that anywhere else. I don't know if it's just the New York flair, the style. Like, oh, I hate that guy. I love him. When you talk about guys in the West, like the pecking order is pretty much like set. Like you got Raymond Lewis, you got John Staggers, who's a friend of mine who's like known as the best player out at Venice Beach. And it's especially when it became like more just playing in the streets, not the Venice Beach Memorial Day tournament. That's like Kenny Hicks started that in 1979 and it became well known. And it became a Memorial Day and or Labor Day kind of thing where people came out and pros played. But just guys who played there every Sunday or every week, like John Staggers is the guy. And Hook Mitchell, who's from the Bay, everybody knows Hook for jumping over cars and motorcycles. Like those guys are at the top and nobody really debates. But when you talk about New York guys, it seems like there's a lot more range. Like I can get on Twitter and argue with Dane Irvin all day. Like, we just go back and forth. And I think that's the essence of the game. It's like where you seen him play, what playground you saw him play, what time period you saw him play. Because we know Pearl and how Kenny Smith will say it, like Pearl was the standard. You know what I mean? Because he came out in 83. Mark came out in 83. Kenny came out in 83. And Kenny Hutchinson went to Arkansas, but drugs kind of didn't – his game didn't elevate. Because he got involved with drugs when he was at Arkansas or at that time. And Kenny Smith will tell, and Kenny Smith did say that when Pearl died, like, yo, I owe a lot of my career and a lot of my motivation was trying to match Pearl because he was the best guard in the country. And Pearl kind of peaked at Syracuse, and obviously all of Pearl's games was on ESPN.
Right.
Him and Patrick Ewing and Georgetown and Syracuse kind of created college basketball what it's on TV is today, like everyday viewing during the week,
right?
Like Big Monday, Super Tuesday, all that's based on like the big East. You know what I mean? And Pearl has a big, and if you look at it, yeah, Pearl couldn't really shoot that great. He's kind of unorthodox, but like he's a legend, But like certain guys, and I'll just say it, like Pearl when he got to the league, I don't know if he had some family problems, and his brother might have had some problems, if I'm not mistaken. I just don't know how motivated he was no more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he got drafted, 14th or so, the Nets, and like he was out of the league after a few years, and most people didn't think he was going to be that good of a pro. I think all the guys in New York were hoping he was like Pearl's going to do this pro magic. But I think scouts knew like, he's going to only be okay. So I don't know if it's like, that reputation thing and like, when you're playing at the Carrier Dome in front of 30,000 people, and then you're like, you're playing for the Nets. Like, how motivated are you? I don't know. Like,
there's probably, I would say that he probably maybe lost motivation or just kind of like when you've been at in the scene for so long, and then you're just kind of like you kind of get burned out from it. Some, I think money could be a motivator, but sometimes it's just like, look,
I don't think money was a big motivator for Pearl. I remember Kenny Smith had mentioned that. He said that when they were in high school, like people would just stop him in the streets and ask him for his autograph. And like those other guys were looking up to him, even though they were all in the same class.
Right.
And like he's probably by the time he got to the pros, it was just like not even the motivation wasn't there. Like it wasn't a big deal. You know what I mean?
Nah, probably wasn't.
And I think as a college player, like he was probably more well known than most NBA players at the time. Really,
exactly.
Like besides the Lakers, Celtics, and a few other teams that were on TV all the time, like Big East basketball was like on TV. Like it helped create ESPN to the brand it is now, and obviously college basketball is a staple of that. You know, like where would ESPN be without college basketball? Damn. It wouldn't be as and then obviously they got MLB and other things on its docket, but like college basketball was really like, to me, the thing that put it on the map. So yeah, I mean those are great things, and like you said, I'm happy for Strickland and the guys who got shine in this doc. I guess maybe Gottsham got to, and a few of the younger guys, but yeah, I wish they would. I would love to talk more about the old guys. Maybe we could get somebody on one day to talk about the old guys. So as we transition here, our last topic is a little more serious, but it's again we talk about Tiny Archibald and wasn't able to make the team. There was 3 other NBA players on his team. I did a story about it on Ballislife.com about how many high school teams have had 3 or more pros or more pros on one team. It's a little more than you think. Obviously, we talk about the Chino Hills team, with Melo, Onyeka, and Lonzo.
Yeah.
And so everybody has a different starting point. But again, I can't sit here and say Tiny Archibald probably wasn't good in 10th or 11th grade. He probably was a baller. The team. And then, DeWitt Clinton also had, I don't know if you know anything about the history of PSAL, Ani. The schools are huge. So DeWitt Clinton had like 8,000 students at times, 10,000 students. So like, they had ballers all across the board.
Oh, man.
Yeah, like the schools were huge. DeWitt Clinton is, along with Long Beach Poly in Southern California, probably has the most famous like alumni of any school in all categories, like judges, politicians, athletes, actors. And again, as you look at the size, you know what I mean?
Right.
And it's such a large school. And
8,000.
Yeah, 7,000, 60 for many years in the 50s, 60s, and I don't know about into the 70s, but they had a huge population of students. So, man, you can imagine how many balls. You can imagine how many balls were just around, like that the coach didn't like or the coach cut.
Right? Yeah, that could really play. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's just crazy to me. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And it happened. So, I'll give you a sample here for DeWitt Clinton in 63-64. They had 3 pros. Luther Green, who was a junior, Ollie Taylor, a sophomore, and Willie Worsley. Okay, that's 63-64. 64-65, they had Nate Archibald on the bench. Luther Green was a senior, and Ollie Taylor was a junior. So, like, you could imagine how good they were.
Right.
You know what I mean? And the 64 team lost to boys in the PSA semifinals at Madison Square Garden. And Clinton has produced 17 NBA players, and most were there from the 60s and 70s. And I think I mentioned this before. UNLV's first All-American, Ricky Sobers, who went on to the NBA, he was so good. He's like, I don't really want to play at DeWitt. I'm just going to wait for college. And I'm going to get ready for college. Well, I know how good the high school team is. Like, I don't want to be one of the guys. Like, I'll just wait and go to college. And he made the pros, and he was All-American at UNLV. He never played at DeWitt. He just chilled with the homies or whatever he did, played in the streets.
And then went to UNLV. Holy shit.
And made the pros, Ricky Sobers, just a great player. So there's a lot of stories like that, and that's what I would like to hear. These high schools were so deep; they didn't have guys that went to the pros or went to college. Like we said about that heaven is a playground, where the Rodney Parker would just scout them in the parks and send them to Seattle, send them to Utah State, send them to. These were guys were just playing pickup. You know what I mean? That's just awesome stories. Like you said, I think that's the mecca. That's what I want to hear about.
Yeah,
because we kind of know about, Rod. Nothing against Rod or Kenny. We know about those guys.
right.
You know what I mean?
But like a documentary on that stuff, or just even a section in a documentary about that stuff, would be like amazing, because they'll shed light on guys that we don't even know. Like,
we don't even know about.
You used to talk about dude. He even played at the high school. He went to UNLV. He was a pro. Like, there's probably plenty of stories like that. That's
stories
crazy.
like that. And that Heaven of as a Playground, I would recommend all our readers check it out. Heaven is a Playground, and the Connie Hawkins story, which is called Foul. Those two books are awesome. Those two books are great. I'll read them again. I've read them more than once. Because you learn more. And it's about New York basketball and how it, cultivated itself into what we had in the 80s and 90s and even into today. So, and obviously the Elite 24 is part of that. Really, I mean, without the street ball guys, the Elite 24 wouldn't have
he wouldn't exist.
It wouldn't have existed. So, want to close out here by, like you said, we talked about Nate Archibald, another guy who wasn't a highly regarded high school player, Bill Russell, and Bill just passed, the NBA all-time legend. I believe he was 88 years old. What's your first reaction to that, Ani?
I was like, it's like a legend's gone. Obviously he was 88 years old, so he lived a lot of life. But you kind of obviously Bill was way before my time, right? But just watching I used to watch old school games, like him and Wilt. One thing I learned when I was growing up playing, Wilt would block shots, but he wouldn't block it out of bounds, right? So he would block it to a teammate or something like that. So things like that, just watching him and how much of a team player he was, and just the stuff he had to go through living in Boston, at those times, and dealing with a whole bunch of racism, and just come back. I mean, his fans are booing him, and he's helping them win 8 straight NBA championships. You know what I mean? That's crazy. And then I know he transitioned to a coach. But just, we're losing. We lost a legend today. He lived a really good life, but just everything he went through and how he's a pioneer, really. For just a big man. You see big men today that are like him. They say, oh, he's only 6'9", but it's how many 6'9" centers do we now you see in the NBA? No one's looking for the 7'1", 7'2" guy. You see a lot more 6'9" type guys. So,
moves well, correct. He can battle with those guys.
Agile, just a
hell of an athlete.
Yeah. And so, just how much of a pioneer, just how much he went through for, players today to have what they have,
To have what they have. No doubt. That's why when I hear people cry about their condition, or even some of the things you hear about in sports where, that's racist, and I'm like, that you guys don't even know what some of these guys are knock it off, right. Now there is some legitimate gripes and some legitimate bigotry and some legitimate racism out there. I'm sure there is, but it's a lot less than it used to be. You hear about some of these now that Bill has passed, but you've heard about him before if you follow the story, people break in his house, write graffiti, put the N-word on the walls, and defecate in his bed. Come on, that's not anything anybody's going through in recent times. So people, like you said, should pay homage, kind of know when they cry wolf what they're really crying for. Is it really as bad as you think it is? That's the thing that sticks out with me with Bill Russell, is that, like you said, this dude is putting it all on the line to win. And then in terms of he was involved in summits with Jim Brown, a young Kareem, and those guys to take or back Muhammad Ali when he didn't want to fight in the Vietnam War.
Right.
And you realize how Kareem was very young, so Kareem put a lot on the line there. Kareem wasn't much older than, he was at UCLA, so he couldn't have been much older than 2021.
Right.
maybe 67. So Kareem was 65, 20, maybe 21. You know, Jim Brown was 30 something, and obviously Bill Russell was probably 34, 35. That's still pretty young, though. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
To put there, you know, put your lifeline on the line, and
especially at that time.
Yeah, especially at that time. So, you know, they get a lot of props for that. You know, like you said, they're pioneers even off the court. You know, and obviously I love Bill Russell in terms because he's a Cali boy. You know, he like part of the Great Migration. His family went to West Oakland, and they were loaded. And like you said about DeWitt LeQuinton, McClymonds was loaded. Like, so Bill Russell backed up Frank Robinson. And a lot of people don't know that. And they're like, well, isn't Bill Russell like 6'10"? But yeah, you know, he probably was a little gangly. I could imagine the kind of prospect Bill Russell was. He's probably like our guard Jacob McFarland for West Coast Elite, kind of like nifty, little, you know, probably not super goofy, strong, little goofy. You know what I mean? And then they put it together. Like, so Frank Robinson is 6'4", 6'5", and built like an ox. You know what I mean? Like, and he was became a MLB Hall of Famer. But like, I can see Frank Robinson just pushing him around,
just pushing dudes out the way. Just just with his like, you know,
you can imagine
being like a physical center at that size, and you know,
especially back then in high school, you're like, I want the guy that the finished product, the physical player. We're, you know, high school basketball was strict back then for many, you know. And you got to give credit to USF for like, okay, we're going to take this guy. He's a good prospect. And like you said, keep the shot blocking and then keeping the play in bounds. Like that revolutionized the game.
100%.
And USF won 2 NCAA titles. He represented you know, the United States in the 56 Olympics. So like it happened fast for him. And like you said, as a lefty shot blocker, who does that remind us of? That reminds us of McFarland and our guy Dennis Evans. You just never. It could click one day for those guys. I'm not, in no way am I saying they're Bill Russell. I'm saying,
but
clicking. You know, what I mean?
Like guys that prototype is going to take a little bit longer, and then if it really clicks, they're really, really good. You know, basketball players that have the chance to make money. So it just kind of, you know, that's all you're saying is like, you know, like McFarland and Dennis Evans is like if it clicked like it did with Russell, they probably looked at him a little project-y and were a little bit raw, but it clicked, and he was an 11-time NBA champion.
And when I look at him, like, what's funny, because we mentioned Ali, and obviously Ali, like, dude, I really haven't even processed that Ali's gone. He's been gone, like 5 years now. I think because he's so well known on the camera. I've said this before on the pod, an old pod, maybe a long time ago. Again, I appreciate you guys listening to episode 138 here as we wrapping up. Is that, like, why is it in boxing? Like, Ani, if you watch Muhammad Ali's fights, then you feel like you watch the fights just like your dad did or your grandpa did. Like, you put them on, okay, Thrilla Manila, whatever one, you know, Smoking Joe, or he's fighting Sonny Liston. You feel like you can evaluate and watch how good he is. But, like, why can't we do that with basketball? I just don't understand that. I don't understand.
Basketball's the only sport
where you can't do that.
It's just hard for people to do that. Well, I could have gone there and dropped 50. No, you know, like appreciate that time, that era of basketball. Because like I wouldn't watch the 50s. I would watch a 15s, 60s game, and I was like, "Oh, this is crazy!" The pace they played, they would score a lot of points. Like people don't know, they scored a lot of points back then.
Yeah, they scored a lot of points. Yeah, the defense might have been different. Or maybe the talent level wasn't. But they're good players, 100%. You know. And you weren't just like, you know, dunking on guys like it was nothing early, especially in the early age, because people would take homage to that, and you could get undercut. You know, they didn't like it. So yeah, but it's very interesting when we talk about those pioneers, civil rights kind of pioneers in sports, and like people could understand and watch Muhammad Ali, but they can't understand Bill Russell and Wilt are like great. Oh, that's old. They're plumbers. I don't get that. When you look at the film, when I see Bill Russell, I see a more focused and a little bit more athletic Dennis Rodman. About the same size, 6'8", 6'9", long arms, going after the long reach, going after loose balls, tipping it to yourself,
Yep.
That's what I see. A guy who's like Dennis Rodman, but like a little bit more ferocious. So and that's a hell of a player. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, that's still an NBA All-Star at the end of the day, you know.
Yeah,
Like
correct.
you can look at Bill, see how quick he gets off the ground, see how he moves and stuff, and say, look, if you plugged him in today's game with the training and everything, you mean to tell me he wouldn't be good here? Like, come on, man. Like he was doing what he was doing with none of that. You know, and the shoes they were playing on. You know what I mean? Like
Converse his feet were probably bloody after every second game, you know?
Right. So
come
on now. Like
the conditions they played in. So yeah, kudos to Bill Russell. And wish we could talk about him more and more. Obviously he accomplished everything on the spectrum. And I will say that, like I said about Frank Robinson, the McClymans was just so great athletically. They had the Pointer brothers later. They were even better later after he graduated. They had even more talent. Ed Thomas, Paul Silas, who became an NBA All-Star.
Yeah.
They had Ed Hadnot. So that was their front line in 58 was Paul Silas, 6'7", monster, strong, went to Creighton. And Ed Hadnot, who was like 6'10", and Ed Thomas like 6'9". So they were like modern size. That was like a great high school team for modern size, like 6'8", 6'9", 6'10", with quick guards. And their guards were quick.
Right.
Yeah. Charles McKinney and like the Pointer brothers, who obviously their sisters are the famous Pointer sisters who became singers. But their two brothers, I think there was two brothers, they were ball players, and one went on to be playing the MLB. So like they had a running back on that team who was a defender off the bench who played in the NFL. So like, and then a little later they had Joe Ellis who played in the NBA. So like McClymonds got even better. And in that Chino Hills team that won 60 straight games, they were trying to pass Compton McClymonds. McClymonds had won 65 straight games, and that Compton team won 66.
Oh, okay.
Chino Hills got to 60 and then lost to Oak Hill.
That's right.
At the Nike store. So their streak ended. And then I remember back then I tried to talk about it as much as I could, that how great those McClymonds teams were. So as great as Bill Russell was and Frank Robinson, like the team even got better later. In their late 50s, they were even deeper and better. So you can imagine how good they were. They're probably the greatest Northern California team. Remember, one of the greatest California teams ever.
Yeah, to win 65, 66 straight games. Jeez.
Yeah. And they went like 110-1. So after they lost, they'd won like another 40 games in a row. Yeah, so they were just amazing, the depth they had in the athletes and in all sports, really. And so great, shout out to Bill Russell, everybody that loves him. I mean, there's nobody that probably doesn't in basketball.
Right.
Like you appreciate him later. And it's just crazy how much of the early days guys are not really, that NBA 50 guys, a lot of guys are not here no more, So I think on that note, Ronnie, I think we'll close it out. Let's talk a little bit just about we'll be back probably next week. We got some travel things to do. We got some things to do. So we'll come back on the pod the following week after the 12th. We're going to be very busy. We'll have a lot to talk about then.
Oh, 100%.
Players, we'll be back on the grind. But
we
wanted to shout out the New York guys and Bill Russell for sure this pod.
Oh yeah, no, this is this is a really good pod because just got to talk about the other things. It's always been we always been on the move so much. I remember like it was just recent when we were in June, we were getting ready for the draft pod, and we were like
a lot of work.
So to be in a position to have some downtime and actually talk about some other stuff that's really kind of going on, it's dope. And then we get back into the swing of things in about 2 weeks, and it's gonna be player. So.
We talked about the young players from the junior All-American camp, and those guys are going to be good. A lot of those guys are going to be good high school players. And then talking about the legends, God, so many New York point guards. Again, I just threw that list out there to stir the pot, and honestly, to talk about Bill Russell, man, you can't say enough about. We can't do him justice in 30 minutes or nothing.
For sure, no.
We could talk about him and all the stuff he went through for hours and hours. So. I think for that'll wrap us up. Again, appreciate everybody listening into episode 138. Appreciate everybody who's helping our YouTube page grow. Make sure you check it out on YouTube. Obviously, we are on Spotify. We're on iTunes. We appreciate all the listens. If you just listen audio, great. If you want to check us out on YouTube page, the Ballislife Podcast Network. But for Ani and Ronnie, we're checking out for this week.
Peace.